What is going on? It's Alex coming back at you with another video, and today we're going to be breaking down Bleacher Report's brand new 2025 NFL mock draft. If you are new, feel free to like, comment, subscribe. I make content like this every single day, including 2 mock drafts a week. One that's 2 rounds with no trades, dropping tomorrow, and then one that is 3 rounds split up into 2 videos. If you guys are new, that does have actual trades. So if you guys like that, feel free to stick around. We have fun on the show all the time, and we're finally getting to the off-season / post-season, and I'm super excited for it because it's going to be a fun year, even though the quarterbacks might not be super exciting. The rest of the draft class actually has some pretty cool people that I would love to talk about, so fingers crossed. This is a live reaction. Bleacher Report does a good job. It is released today, so you guys know what's up. I kind of don't do a mock draft because I also know Broshmo drops one, so I kind of let him have mock draft Monday for the time being, even though I used to do mock draft Mondays. But let's get into this. Starting out with the number 1 overall selection, we got the Titans with the number 1 pick, and they select Shedeur Sanders out of Colorado. There are reports that they really like Cam Ward. I ended up explaining why Shedeur Sanders, in my opinion, would be a better fit for Tennessee, but I also am of the belief that the quarterbacks aren't worth the top 10 selections. That's just my humble opinion. I have them outside my top 32. That's just me again. I know that there are other people who share that opinion. I might be in the minority, but at least I know that I am not clinically insane. So, but the Titans going Shedeur, it is a good fit. I just don't necessarily believe with the offensive line, with Shedeur's lack of top-end athleticism and escapability, that it would end up being a very early success type of model. So, fingers crossed, if Shedeur does go to Tennessee, you guys do have a better surrounding cast, but I think Shedeur is a better quarterback fit for Brian Callahan. But next, we have the Browns going Cam Ward. With Deshaun Watson apparently lengthening his return from his Achilles, we'll be seeing how he ends up actually coming back in 2025. If he does, Cam Ward would be an understandable selection. Again, I do have my concerns over both of the quarterbacks and just like overall where they're at as prospects. I have a video out on that already, even though it is pre-Aller going back to school and stuff. But, it does kind of break down my opinion of the quarterback class as it is right now. Continuing on, though, you got the Giants going Travis Hunter, cornerback out of Colorado. Travis Hunter's a really good player. If the Giants just want to go best player available, you could end up going with Travis. My only issue is I think Will Johnson would be a better fit. Like, Travis Hunter would be a good player. And, I think there's a little bit too much criticism of Travis at this point. You can get on him for his lack of concern for his personal relationship, but I don't think you can get on his ass for his play on the field. He might not be corner 1, he might not be wide receiver 1, but he's still a damn good player, and he's a top 3 wide receiver and corner in this class. So, at the same time, like as much as we want to criticize it, he still is going to be an impact player. So the Giants could definitely use him in a multitude of ways. I personally don't know if I would go with him, but that's because I'm a big fan of Will Johnson. Continuing on, we have the number 4 pick with the Patriots going Will Johnson. I think Abdul Carter would be the wiser selection, but Will Johnson, probably the better player. Air quotes. Both of them are absolutely great. So the Patriots end up going BPA rather than having to just, go after Travis Hunter because they have the first non-quarterback pick of the draft. And, Joe Milton, looking good. I'm not going to take a full victory lap, but again, people were saying this guy can't play quarterback in the NFL. All of a sudden, he comes out and has one of the best performances of the week. It's not, again, you're playing against backups for the most part. It is essentially a glorified preseason game, but it is still worth celebrating the fact that, hey, Joe Milton has shown that he can be a quarterback in the NFL. Can he be a starting quarterback in the NFL? With that performance, if it's consistent against starters, yes. If he is not necessarily able to do that versus starters, he is definitely a really high-quality backup, and I do think teams like the Giants right here should be trying to trade for him. They should send a 4th, maybe a 5th-round pick, and I don't know any higher than that because, again, you have 1 game of experience on a 6th-round contract, but I digress. The Patriots get themselves a damn good player there. Jaguars go Mason Graham at pick number 5. Again, it's understandable if you really want to continue developing the defensive interior, have Mason Smith there who's still developing, and you pretty much have 2 Masons. You can understand it. Again, I like corner, but you already took the top 2 off the board, so I'm not going to disagree with this one if you guys just stay here. I've never clicked this next button. Oh, man, why does it have to scroll all the way to here? But regardless, pick 6, Raiders go. T-Mac, hello. The Raiders, you guys definitely need a wide receiver 1. T-Mac is a very possible option, and so I'm not going to disagree with it. Antonio Pierce, I mean, he's like, oh, well, I'm giving clearance to go talk to other teams, but, we still haven't said that I'm, like, gone yet. I'm like, damn. I mean, first off, that's just, like, don't lead a guy on like that, right? I mean, imagine you're Antonio Pierce and you're talking to teams and, they're not going to prioritize you if you still are. Like, imagine you're going and talking to a new girl and it's like, yeah, well, I'm still kind of with my ex. Like, girl, like, who? I have all these other dudes I want to be with, not you. So I just feel like it's kind of bad. It's kind of a bad look for the Raiders organization. It kind of sucks for AP. I really do hope that he gets some clarity sooner or later, and you guys get to bounce back. But without a quarterback available for you guys at 6, I think that's the smart move to go after best player available. If you think that's T-Mac, I respect it. At number 7, you got Abdul Carter going to the Jets. Sometimes it's too good to pass on, so I'm not going to disagree there. I don't think edge is a massive need for the Jets. I think, honestly, a better defensive coach, like Saleh, kind of was able to do it before he got fired. Like, there's a graphic that shows before and after he got fired. This defense was top of the NFL. So, I mean, it's not maybe number 1, but it was among the best in the NFL. And, I don't really think that it's necessarily indicative of the talent on the team, more so the coaching, but Abdul Carter, sometimes you just can't pass on the best player available. If the Panthers go Malachi Starks over Jalen Walker, I will riot, and I love Malachi Starks. I'm willing to take Malachi Starks in the top 10, but the Panthers need an edge rusher. They need defensive interior. The best value right now would be Jalen Walker or James Pierce, one of the two, but safety, something that I think they can end up waiting a little bit on. At number 9, you got the Saints going Nick Scorton. Nick Scorton moved back up my board. It's good to see him bounce back. I think he slowed down a little bit in the middle of the year and then finally started picking it back up. Really good movement skills, especially for his size. His agility, that's something that was surprising to me. And I'm actually going to spoil a little bit of, by the way, we're going to be doing an edge video. That's going to be the next positional ranking. I was like, screw it. I really wanted to get Kamen Rucker in there, but UNC defensive tape is just impossible to find. We're going to hope that, before the final edge rankings can go out, we're going to get some of that because I really do not want to resort to non-all-22. That's just that's my quality control. I am not going to grade a player in non-all-22, but I digress. Nick Scorton has better agility than Josiah Stewart. Like, Josiah Stewart is 40 pounds lighter than him, and I think that's why Josiah actually misses a lot of tackles, including he missed 2 sacks versus Oregon. Nick Scorton is just unbelievably fluid. So I was just like, what the hell? I expected it to be reversed. But the Saints could go after Nick Scorton. I would not be overwhelmingly surprised. I think that his body type doesn't usually go super duper high, but I do think that, he is definitely worth a solid, maybe top 20 selection at the moment. But Nick Scorton's a good player. He ended up slipping a little bit for his midseason performance, but he's back up to the top. And that's based off of his most recent game where he was graded a 41. So, spoiler alert for the Edge video. That's the game I'm going to talk about. At number 10, you got the Bears going Will Campbell. I think that you need to go after someone who could be a pure tackle. I don't fully trust Will Campbell to be a pure tackle. I think he'd be okay and solid as a tackle, but I do think you're kind of limiting Will Campbell at his true potential as a high-end elite guard. And I would prefer to go after someone like Josh Simmons, Kelvin Banks. Kelvin Banks is going to be taking a pretty big jump as well. I think his performance over the end of the year has shown excellent progression. The Niners then go Jahdae Barron. Jahdae Barron's a really good player. I just don't think he's really a San Francisco 49ers kind of player. He's sub 6 foot. He has short arms. He's a really good zone coverage player. You're going to be designating him as a pure slot, in my opinion, to put him in the best spot. And it's not a diss at him at all. Some of the best players are in the slot. So I think it's really rich to take him at number 11, very, very rich. And I think there's a lot of corners that can, for the value of their respective picks down the board, provide a lot more impact than Jahdae does at 11 if you end up going after another player, i.e. Kelvin Banks, Josh Simmons, Arianti Urzuri, etc. Cowboys then go Emeka Egbuka at 12. Emeka's a good player. You can kick him to the boundary. You can put him in the slot. I'd prefer for him to go to a team that really could use him in the slot, because I think Brian Hartline knows how to use his receivers best, and he uses them primarily in the slot. But the Cowboys need a receiving weapon. I just don't think Emeka is on that same tier necessarily as someone like Brian Thomas. That would have been like pre-draft wise looked at relatively similar to Emeka Egbuka in terms of where they were getting drafted. But, regardless, Emeka Egbuka is a good player. I just don't think it'd be worth it with the guys on the board at number 12. At 13, you got the Dolphins going Armand Membu. So we're seeing a lot of original picks. I'll just keep it like that. Membu's a great player. Don't get me wrong. I love Membu coming into the year. He was a top 40 player for me. Right now, I actually adjusted my guard value. That's why he slipped, not because of his play. But, he is a really, really solid player who could play guard for y'all. I just don't think you need to do that at 13. I think there's a lot better value at a multitude of other positions. Yeah, the Colts going Tyler Warren at number 14. Tyler Warren is an amazing player. He's my tight end 1, and I think he's a good fit for the Colts. I think he's a little bit of an underwhelming athlete. We'll be doing a tight ends video as well. It's going to be edge and tight ends are the next two, because I don't know why. I just started catching up on a bunch of both of those positions. I felt like that was the areas I needed to catch up the most to be able to have enough knowledge about the guys who I'm talking about. But Tyler Warren, he is tight end 1. He's a really damn good player. And just again, there is going to be a little bit of that issue in terms of separation with speed, but he also has a lot of other things that are really good. Falcons then go James Pierce at 15. That's a dream pick. Obviously, he's my number 2 player of the class. I love him to death. He's a little bit on the slimmer side at 243, but that doesn't really stop him from being impactful. He generates speed to power extremely well. He has a very solid anchor, especially for his size. I comp him to miniature Dallas Turner, which, again, I had Dallas Turner as, what was it, number 4 on my board. I loved Dallas Turner, but you guys know me. I fall in love with certain players, and I'm not ashamed to be afraid of to fall in love with them. But at 16, you got the Cardinals going Mykel Williams, and I'm notoriously against Mykel. Like, that's just something, like, I loved him in the All-American Bowl. He was one of the players that I walked away with, writing his name down. Him, like Raleek Brown, I think, as well, who went to USC, like, out of high school. There's a lot of players I really liked that game, Xavier Nwankpa, and so I was like, kind of bummed out by his performance in 2023. You start out 2024, and he's not necessarily 100% healthy. I watched some of his most recent games, and actually ended up like looking primarily at Notre Dame as well, because that was a game where he had 0 production and anything like that. And in the edge rusher rankings videos, in the ranking video, I will be breaking down that game, that Notre Dame game. But I came away feeling like he is so much more improved than anywhere he was last year. The way that he could bench press a player off the line, like, it's ridiculous. He's improved tremendously this year. I think Cardinals would be actually really smart to take him. And that's coming from me, that I am notoriously hesitant on Mykel Williams. Really good player. And it's just so good to see these guys start to flourish. Like, you saw it last year, but it's like, man, the consistency was not remotely close to where it is right now, in my opinion. So good job for Mykel Williams. I don't know if it's like the best pick for the Cardinals, but it's still a very good one, and I'm glad that I finally came around on him. Then you got the Bengals going Walter Nolan, a player who I did not come around on. I do think that he's a good player, very good player. I just have my relative concerns. I don't think the Bengals would get the upgrade with Walter Nolan that they would with some other players on their defensive line. At number 18, you got the Seahawks going Kelvin Banks. Really good value. I think, honestly, he's been able to prove, even versus guys like Nick Scorton, he belongs as a tackle in the NFL. If you're going to take him to be a guard in the short run, tackle in the long, that's fine. That's perfectly reasonable. But I do think if you cannot have a legitimate path to being an offensive tackle for Kelvin Banks, it is pretty limiting for him. At number 19, you got the Texans going Tyler Booker. Great pick. I mean, you just get someone who's really solid. D'Amico goes back to Bama to get a really solid player. Yeah, you just can't go wrong with him. You really can't. At 20, you get the Buccaneers going Jalen Walker. Ridiculous value. He ended up declaring today. Really, really good player. I think he should be a top 15 player in the class. Obviously, you see where he's at for me at number 8. And that includes 2 guys, technically 3, but 2 guys above him that have season-ending injuries, which I do think that if you are within 5, or even within like 3 for that matter, of somebody after or before a season-ending injury could drop you below him. So he technically could be even as high as number 6 overall on my board. At number 21, you got the Dolphins going. What the hell? The Broncos going Colson Loveland. I think tight end's a great move for him. Greg Dulcich didn't work out. Colson Loveland, next guy up. He's a really good player. I thought he was more underwhelming than I was expecting. I didn't think he took a step up, I should say. I was really hoping that he would have taken up to be like above Tyler Warren, maybe a top 15 player for me. He didn't end up doing that, but currently right now he's still at number 31 on my board, a really solid player. At 22, you got the Steelers going Ashton Jeanty. It literally is Najee Harris, but better, and that works really well with our offense. I think that the quality of this pick, first off, he shouldn't be at 22. He'll be going higher, but the quality of this pick and the impact of it will be solely dependent on two things. One, what we do with the rest of the draft. No shit, Sherlock, right? But two, the health of Troy Fontenot. I think that if he can stay healthy, we don't have to really worry about filling in an offensive line position because Fontenot is a very good player. And he would be perfect for Ashton Jeanty because he's a physical, great run blocker. And, that game versus Penn State, the thing that I didn't like about it was the 2 fumbles. And the 2 fumbles were kind of what bothered me. And granted, weren't horrible fumbles. But the thing that a lot of people point out is 30 carries, 99 yards. He had 16 missed tackles forced on those. So just got to give that to him as well. I think he'd be a great Steeler. And he feels like he'd be a great Steeler, but I just doubt that we'll get that opportunity. Rams then go Josh Connerly. Josh Connerly is another guy, just like Kelvin Banks, has just been improving. And I love it. I really do. I need to see and finalize Josh Connerly's grade. That is 100% what's happening after I end up doing edge and tight end because I love offensive line. But we're kind of drip feeding both of those at the moment. Green Bay then goes Ben Morrison. I just still think he goes back to school. He has yet to make his final designation as of right now, unless you guys know, which, again, something slipped through the cracks, but my homies end up tagging me on everything on X, so I love you guys for that. But Ben Morrison would be a great pick. You guys see where he's at on my board. He was my number 3 guy before getting hurt. And, if you get that value at 24, that is absolutely ridiculous. He's a great player. You guys need a boundary corner. He fits Jeff Hafley's system. I'm a big fan. Chargers going Trey Harris is a bit early. I think there's a lot of receivers in this class that can accomplish very similar impacts to Trey Harris. And especially for a first-round pick where the Chargers are still lacking on the interior of the offensive line, where they're still technically lacking in a multitude of other areas as well. Tight end, which you wouldn't do one at 25, but also on the defensive line. I think that edge rusher, you can get somebody to be the heir apparent to everything that you have there and pair up with Tuli Tuipulotu. I think that would be a better use of draft capital than Trey Harris. At number 26, the Commanders go Luther Burden, especially when Luther Burden's on the board. I know that technically McConkey's a slot, but you can kick McConkey to the boundary. But that would it'd make me scratch my head, and I'm not a big Luther Burden apologist either. But at 26, that's an amazing pick there for the Commanders. 27, we got the Ravens going Amari and Hampton. I would cry as a Steelers fan because you guys see exactly where he's at on my board. I do have him above Ashton Jeanty. Again, Jeanty dropped solely because of the fumbles. And it was only a 1-point drop. It could have been a lot more if I actually stuck to my rules. But I ended up curving it a little bit for Ashton. But Baltimore getting Amarian would tear my soul out. The 2 top backs in the class to go to the AFC North. It is what it is. Vikings then go Tate Ratledge, guard out of Georgia. You got to sometimes fill your holes with proper value. Pause. But regardless, I think Tate had a really struggle end of the year post-injury. I'm excited to see him get back and be healthy, but I really do have some concerns over his overall performance when not 100%. And he's not super young either. The Vikings, I think, would have a better opportunity with other guards in this class like Donovan Jackson. Then we have the Bills going Derek Harmon, just declared today. I thought he declared already, but regardless, really good player, deservedly a potential first-round pick. For me, he is definitely a round 2 kind of guy. Someone who I really liked there at Michigan State as well. And the Bills do need some extra punchiness there on the defensive interior next to Dwayne Carter for the future, as well as, of course, at Oliver. So next we have the Eagles going Mike Green. Mike Green makes a lot of sense. I feel like this does feel like a very Philadelphia Eagles pick. Mike Green's a great edge rusher. Again, very similar grade to Derek Harmon for me. Just both really solid players, really solid defenders. Maybe not my socks aren't blown off the way that they are with some other players, But Mike Green is a very, very good edge rusher. And he might not be as high on my board as everyone else is. I still like him a lot. Then you got the Lions going Princely Umanmielen at 31. It makes sense. I mean, he's a really good player. Like, really good player. And I think that he has some issues to work on. But since he's going to be an edge too, I'm not going to complain. Very good value there for Detroit. And at 32, you got the Chiefs going Josh Simmons. So, I mean, I'll go into soliloquy one more time. The Chiefs, like, you have to have some self-awareness in life, right? If, for example, you're a guy who's 5'8", 5'9" on the record, but between us, I'm not going to go and then just be like, well, I'm going to date a girl who wants a guy to go to Pilates all the time. My hamstrings are just too tight. So you got to admit, you got to be self-aware. It's like, man, if a girl really wants a guy to do something like that, then maybe you're not the right guy, right? That doesn't mean you're a bad guy. Just like the Chiefs suck at developing offensive tackles. Doesn't mean that they're a bad team or a bad organization, but maybe you should look at something that's a little bit better of a fit. If you can't develop your offensive tackles, just like I sure as hell will never be able to do the splits, maybe you should do something about that. Maybe you should go to a Pilates that doesn't have somebody who's super flexible. Maybe it's for beginners. But for the Chiefs, don't go and develop offensive tackles, especially one coming off of his season-ending injury. It just doesn't make sense to me. Even though the value is incredible, this would be the one tackle I'll be like, okay, whatever. But it's just like, man, it is like very similar to, let's see, Bengals and developing edge rushers. They just don't do it very well. They don't. Kansas City can't develop an offensive tackle to save their life. Just go to free agency. That's how the Bengals got Trey Hendrickson. You guys can fix the offensive tackle spot probably by doing that. So do that for yourself. Do it for Josh Simmons as well, right? Like, don't put someone in a bad situation. But that's going to be the video. Thank you so much for watching. I love you. See you on the far side. Peace.